And we're live.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Trent Thompson. I'm here with Geert, Bevin.
Hello.
Today we are just going to kind of walk you through creating a sound from the ground up, and Geert is going to talk through some of the UI UX aspects of the design as we kind of work through it. As we normally say, this is completely unrehearsed, so
Completely.
And neither one of us are players. So hopefully you can use your imagination when we try to demonstrate some of the playing functions. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create an initialized patch. So I'm going to hold compare and shift, and that is going to basically just give me a basic saw wave on oscillator 1. And I'm going to start from here and start building, and here it's going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing. Again, not rehearsed, so.
So the nice thing about the compare and shift function is whenever you're in a place and you're like, okay, I actually want to go back to a blank slate so that I can just let my creativity flow, there's no navigation that you have to do. You don't have to start browsing for the unit patch. It's right there, shift and compare.
Yep. So right now we've got this saw wave pulled up, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to start with a triangle. And the neat thing about the triangle in this instrument is that you can actually adjust the rise and fall time. So instead of using a wave shaper, what we're actually doing is changing the rise and fall time. So if I modulate this triangle, we're going to get more motion, and we're going to get some variations between that dark sound or that warm, lush triangle sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the waveform modulation here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of motion to this triangle wave.
And so one of the design decisions we had on the UI was that we have these three beautiful OLED displays that always allow you to see the shape of the waveform, of the basic oscillator waveform that you're working with. We have like the more panels that we're going to talk about later that can show you more detail, but the OLEDs are always there so that you can get this guide, this visual guide towards the oscillator's wave shape.
Okay, so right now I've got some basic motion going, and we just have a single oscillator going, right? And it's only going through the ladder filter. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to also add a route from oscillator 1 to the state variable filter, and I'm going to use that state variable filter. I'm going to modulate that to create some added motion to the sound here. So I'm going to route it to the SVF also.
So we have these two switches for each sound source that goes through the mixer. You can decide independently if they go through the SVF and the ladder, and also see them light up as LEDs on the panel, which gives you a great overview of all the routings that are going on. There's one tiny exception, that is the external audio input. To get there, you can press the More button here, and the external audio will be at the bottom, because that's a less used feature, and this panel looks so beautiful with like these 5 knobs there. It works out so great.
All right, so we've got that sound going to both filters now, and we've got an even blend between the two filters. So I'm going to use the mix control to show you that. That's the SVF, that's the ladder. I'm not going to hear a lot of difference just yet. Give myself a little bit more level here. Okay, so I'm going to shift the SVF over to bandpass mode, and I am going to crank the resonance, and you're going to hear kind of a peak in that filter.
So Trent, the motion that we can hear, that is the wave angle modulation that you set up here.
Right.
That is driven by the third LFO.
Yes.
So the speed of the third LFO is hardwired to this knob of the LFO3 amount.
Yes.
That will modulate the wave angle of the first oscillator, which moves it between saw and triangle, and that is now going through those two filters. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. So all the motion that you're hearing is only the one oscillator right now. We're not modulating the filters at all. And you can hear as I kind of sweep through the SVF how it kind of creates a peak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the hardwired modulations in the instrument to create some motion only on the state variable filter. So in the cutoff modulation section, you have these two buttons. One says SVF mod, one says ladder mod. So if I press both of them, all of these cutoff modulation controls affect the cutoffs of both filters. If I select just the ladder, only the ladder would be affected. In this case, I only want to affect the state variable filter. So I have that selected, and just like the wave angle modulation, there's actually a direct modulation route from LFO2 to this cutoff modulation. If you want to talk a little bit about
these switches here, some people have wondered about if they are stateful, if they actually indicate what is going on in these modulation routings. What they actually do is they direct the parameter values as you move the knob. So if you select both of them together, it means that you're going to change the parameter of the modulation for both of the filters.
Yes.
If it's only one of them, the other one will still exist.
Oh, that's a good point.
But you can tweak each one of them separately or both at the same time by using these buttons.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I'm going to raise the LFO2 modulation amount, and we're going to start moving the state variable filter. And right now we're only listening to the state variable filter, so that's all we're hearing.
And so that is because the mix knob is turned all the way to the left. Even though they still are routed both through it, you're only hearing the SVF part through the mix. And that hardwired modulation is tied to LFO2, so we're now using two LFOs. LFO3 for the wave angle and LFO2 for the cutoff modulation of the state variable filter.
So, so there's a couple things. Right now, we've got some independent motion between the LFO that's modulating the wave shape of oscillator 1 and the wave shape that's modulating the filter cutoff on the state variable filter. And I actually want to synchronize those. And so LFOs, because of the Moog button implementation, have the option to be synchronized. And so we can work with clock division. So if I turn sync on, and I guess I should probably talk through what I'm doing. I'm pressing the Moog button in LFO2, and on the second row, there's an option to turn sync on or off. And when it's on, the LFO rate knob will work through clock divisions on that particular LFO. So now I'm going to do the same thing with LFO3. I'm going to press the Moog button, and I am going to set that to sync. And so now these movements should actually be synchronized. And now I'm going to start working with some clock divisions. And the popping that you hear is actually a movement from one clock division to another, and the cycle of the LFO starting over.
Yeah, and you can actually see it update in the display here. It shows where the sync division changes as you turn this knob. And you could also tweak that with the soft knob here. When the LFOs are synced, these have the same function if that row is active. There's a question from the audience, like, is there any plans to have the OLED display the modulated waveform? That is really, really hard, almost technically impossible to do, because there's so many things that go on in the background. The whole modulation engine can do so many things in audio rate. Having that display here would be really hard, and I don't even think that we'd be able to do it actually.
Well, I think probably what part of the question is can the OLEDs be used effectively as oscilloscopes? And the answer to that is no. One of the reasons that we actually opted against that was because of how distracting 3 individual OLEDs moving with a lot of the kind of exaggerated behavior, how distracting that actually would be. And so we chose, one of the things that we chose to do is to take some of that power and shift it over to the effects so that we're able to really kind of push that effects engine. Okay, so back to the sound. And it's worth noting that there's no effects at all on any of the sound. So everything you're hearing is dry. We have a single triangle wave oscillator that's being modulated, and we're only hearing the state variable filter being modulated in bandpass mode.
Quickly highlight something about this Moog panel, since we're here. There is an approach that we've taken throughout all the Moog panels, all those triangle buttons here, where the right side always shows you the values of the controls that are physically on the front panel, so that you have a display of what is going on in values. And then additional options are available below in rows of 4 that are lined up with the soft knobs here, so that you can tweak additional options based on the Moog panel that is active. And to the left side, the top left side, there's always a graphic that shows you visually what is going on. And we tried to make like the best compromise between making this as informational as possible, but also easy to understand at a glance, so that you're not like trying to figure out what that graphic means. It will always be within those two boundaries to make sure that you know what is going on by just glancing at it.
All right, so let's get back to our sound. So again, just here's where we're at with the sound. Add a little more bass to it. I'm going to change the oscillator footage down to 16 foot.
So we're still only hearing one oscillator, right?
Just one oscillator, and we're only hearing it through that bandpass. So now I'm actually going to blend that ladder filter back into the mix.
That sounds so good.
So what I want is, at this point, is I want to fade in on the LFO, right? I like the way that the motion is occurring in the oscillator, but when I play a new note, I want the modulation that's affecting the state variable filter to fade in. So if I press the More button on LFO 2, I'm going to go and scroll down to I have delay time, fade in time, fade out time. I don't want what I'm doing to fade out, but I do want it to fade in over time. So I'm going to have it wait, let's say, a whole note here. Yeah. And then I'm also going to create a fade in time of, I guess it's equivalent of 4 whole notes, right? That's how that effectively works. And so now, when I hold a chord, we should get a nice smooth fade in of modulation to the SVF.
And all these controls adapt automatically once the LFO is switched to sync mode. So they all switch to time divisions compared to just frequency.
So if I turn off sync, you can see that we've got 2 seconds, 8 seconds, which is probably a little too much. I'm going to turn sync back on. I'm going to set that fade time down to a whole count as well. Let's see. You hear that slowly fading in. So that's the LFO delay being used with the fade in time. That modulation is slowly fading in to modulate that filter cutoff. The next thing that I think we probably should do is we're not using any of the envelopes right now at all. And which is wild, because all the motion that you're hearing is really just based on these two LFOs in this single wave shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the modulation envelope, and because the envelopes can actually loop and be synchronized as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn synchronization on in the modulation envelope, and actually I'm going to press the More button over here. You can see on the screen what I'm doing. But with sync on, if I press the loop button, now as I hold a note, that envelope is going to cycle in a synchronized fashion. The biggest thing we have to do now, though, is we've got to send it somewhere. And I'm kind of thinking, I don't know, you got any ideas? I mean, we didn't prepare. This is just, we're on the fly here. You know what, why don't we set up some sound for oscillator 2?
I was going to say,
and let's
bring
set
in
it
a second
to the
oscillator.
level.
And
yeah. So let's get some sound going on oscillator 2. I'm just going to send it to the ladder. Possible to get a little more level over here, guys? Okay, so now what we're hearing is we're hearing that saw wave on oscillator 2. And so I'm going to send the modulation envelope to the level of oscillator 2, to the volume level. I'm going to do that by pressing the destination button.
So this is a common approach throughout the whole panel.
Yes.
We've got different sizes of switches. You've got the triangle ones that are the more panels, and then you've got the rectangular ones that allow you to switch between behaviors or to indicate certain states. But then you also have the rectangular ones, small rectangular shape, that allow you to set up quick assigned modulations on one press, right? So that's what you're going to do now, right?
Yeah, and really quickly, we have a question. Do the envelopes act subtly different on all voices? Can this be adjusted? The envelopes, if the question is, if I play a note over and over again, will the envelopes behave the same? The answer is yes. But between the filter, amplifier, and modulation envelope, you do have the ability to adjust the curves and the behaviors of each envelope individually.
Yeah.
So those movements between individual voices do not change, but it is an analog instrument, so the voices, the filters, all of that analog signal path, there are some subtle variations between each voice because it's an analog instrument.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to make that assignment. I'm going to press the destination button, and I'm going to hold a chord.
As soon as you do that, you see this quick assign UI that pops up that prompts you to select what you're going to modulate with that envelope.
Yep, so I'm going to hold a chord and I'm going to adjust the oscillator 2 volume knob, and that is going to both become my destination and it's going to become my amount control. So I'll show you this.
And so as you turn that destination knob, you tweak the amounts, but you can still tweak all the other knobs on the front panel to change the sound that you're working with so that you can get into that sweet spot. And then we also added some small tweaks that allow you to really dial it in. If you want to have a little adjustment, you can use the encoder here to go in increments of 1%. Or if you hold down Shift, you can even make it much more finer grained and go to increments of like 100%.
So you can hear that cyclical modulation of the level of oscillator 2.
And so while this modulation assignment is being created and tweaked now, it is already present in the modulation matrix that you can access later if you want to through the mod button, which allows you to change it later on with a UI that provides all these capabilities, but in a little bit more condensed way.
Okay, so I'm happy with that assignment. Yeah. So I'm going to press done.
Yeah.
And
it's right here.
Yep, there we go. Sorry, I was in a different menu. All right, so if I press the mod button, you can see all the modulation assignments that currently exist in the instrument. We've got 2, and you can assign about 20 per synthesizer in addition to all the hardwired modulation options on the panel. So that would include like pitch modulation, waveform modulation, FM, all the cutoff modulation, all the hardwired things that we've already got in place for you. And so now what I'm going to do, because
Can I add a little bit there?
Absolutely.
So we have 20% in the mod matrix, but we also have a sequencer that has modulation lanes.
That's a good
and
point.
so if you go, we're not going to go in depth here, but in terms of modulation capabilities, if you go to step edit and modulation section in the sequencer, you can actually set up another 20 rows for each synth through the sequencer where your modulations can move over time, which is pretty wild.
That's news to me. That's incredible. All right, so we've got our sound, and you can hear some subtle variations between the notes because as I play the chords, we're going to get some variations between the voices. So. Okay, so we got this kind of cool moving sound. I'd like to get a little more motion out of this, and so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the routing a little bit. I'm going to take the state variable filter, and instead of being in parallel, right now the state variable filter and the ladder filter are in parallel, which means they're running side by side. You can hear them both equally depending on the balance of this mix control. So I'm going to press the route button and send it to series, which is going to send anything that I'm feeding into the state variable filter into the ladder. So it's no longer got its own direct output. And we're going to see what we have right now. Slow down the LFO too. Okay, remember, neither one of us are players, so, you know, sorry. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create some motion because really it's a pretty stagnant sound as far as dynamics on the filters go. And I'm going to use the filter envelope, which is already, it's already assigned to this cutoff modulation section. And I'm gonna select ladder because that's what I want to modulate. I want to kind of get some motion in the brightness of the sound. So when I play a note, right now you're not really hearing anything. So I'm going to use the EG amount control to create kind of a jump in that filter cutoff. Change the filter slope a little bit too, just brighten things up. So there's 4 slope selections on the ladder filter, and basically what you're doing is you're adjusting the slope, if you will, of the filter cutoff. And so as you kind of smooth out the slope versus creating a kind of a hard cutoff, you get more high frequency harmonics, which because we're still really only relying on that triangle wave for the core sound. We need to kind of open up the top end, and we could bring in more top end by adding, making a change to the sound of the oscillators. But I don't want to do that right now. So, all right, I'm gonna turn up oscillator 2 though.
The one thing we can also show is to hear the motion of that envelope. You can go to modulation page and just turn it off and see what it would be like without that envelope.
Right.
And then bring it back in.
So it's pretty subtle right now.
It's pretty subtle. Another thing to note is as you start making changes to any sound, the init sound, or any saved preset, as you start making changes to any sound, the save button will be highlighted.
Yes.
So that you know that you're not in the saved state anymore, which is a nice indicator.
Let's see. Can the one create a sine wave from a filter and combine it with regular oscillators to layer sine and saw together? That's actually kind of what we're doing with the state variable filter right now, at least a little bit. I'm not actually using it as an oscillator. So yes, you can do that with the ladder filter, but by nature of the ladder filter, the tracking of the ladder filter has some subtle imperfections. So yes, you can do that. Mark, can we get more level on these speakers, please? All right, so we're getting kind of almost a delayed sound, and that's coming from that cyclical modulation envelope that's modulating the volume of oscillator 2.
So with the looped envelope, you basically have another 3 complex LFOs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is
and in addition to that, the envelopes can be sent anywhere in addition to their kind of their traditionally assigned facility. So the filter envelope, we could send that to the pitch of oscillator 2 if we wanted to, and also the noise envelope can be used in the modulation section. It can be used as a modulation source to modulate other things as a simple envelope as well. Okay, so now kind of what we have is we've got a pretty simple sound, kind of smooth. I'm just going to create a little bit more motion on that filter. I'm slowing down the attack. Let's make it a little more pad. Give these a little more decay.
So as we're tweaking, you see that the panel focus here has synth 1 highlighted.
That's right.
Which means that the first synth, the one that's in red, is actually being tweaked. And at any given time, you can switch to another synth and tweak the panel controls for that particular sound, for that particular timbre. But right now, we're still working with 1 timbre.
So we're working with one timbre, and what I'm going to do actually, and it's kind of a good segue, is I'm going to go over to Synth 2, and I'm just going to turn on keyboard control. And Synth 2 is already set up to be at an initialized state. So right now you can hear the two sounds together. If I wanted to isolate a sound, if I hold Shift and press Synth 2, now I'm soloed. I'm soloed on Synth 2, and the only thing I hear is synthesizer 2. Okay, so I'm going to just create kind of a multi-saw bass sound that's going to go under this pad that we've already created. So I'm just going to turn on all three oscillators, and I'm going to send all three of them to the ladder, and I'm going to set them all to 16 feet, and I'm going to crank them all up because we're going to push the ladder a little bit harder. I'm also going to roll back that ladder filter cutoff, and we're just going to have a pretty steady sound.
So there's a question from the audience asking if the values that are displayed can be switched to different units. At this time, they're always indicating the natural unit that is used by the sound the element that is being controlled.
Yep.
So it is not switchable.
All right, so I'm going to take Synth 2 out of solo, but I'm going to keep it in focus, and I'm just going to play where we're at. All right, I'm going to set, let's see, I'm going to set Synth 2 to mono, and I'm just going to take down its poly count to a single voice.
So how did you get there?
Oh, sorry about that. Moving ahead of myself. All right, so in the Polyphony module, if I press the More button, I have I have direct access to the unison count, the poly count for that specific synthesizer, as well as note priority and the stealing modes. And what the stealing modes are, it gives you the ability to determine how Moog One prioritizes different notes across different synthesizers, because it is 3 synthesizers, and so you really, if you don't want voices being allocated from, let's say, your monophonic bass that's at the bottom of your patch, if you set it to mono and set the poly count to 1, it's not going anywhere. The other thing is there's a parameter in here called pitch variance. We've gotten a lot of questions about a slop parameter, if you will, that creates variations between individual notes. And that's also in here, and that's from 0 to 50 cents. So that actually can get pretty out there. Yes. Okay, so I've done that. I've set that to mono, poly count 1. I'm also going to just slow down the envelopes on that bass sound a little bit. And I need to go back to synthesizer 1, and I need to change the poly count on that. Yeah. I'm just going to change that to 8 because I'm going to do something else.
So we have another question here while you do that. Can the ladder filter slope be used as a modulation destination? At this point, not. We're looking into this. This might be a future improvement. Yeah.
I'm guessing this question comes from that implementation on the sub 37 and subsequent 37. Definitely something, switches is definitely something that we're going to look into. It's a lot of instrument, and so it'll, we do plan to grow its capabilities over time. Let's see. Okay, so I really only want this bass to go no higher than, let's say, this is called middle C. So I'm going to change the range on this bass. So I'm going to select Synth 2, and I'm just going to press the high button, and I'm changing the range. You're going to see an update here in the screen as well. I'm going to
the upper limit of the notes that will be routed to that synth.
Yeah, so I'm going to press middle C here. And now, any notes that are played above that will only be our pad sound. And below that is going to be our pad sound
with the bass.
With the bass.
And so I'm not sure you'll be able to see this on the live stream, but as you're playing, the synth that is actually reacting will very briefly light up to indicate which one is being controlled by the notes you're playing, which gives you a quick indicator in case you wonder where the sound is coming from.
Let's see, can the Moog One do comb filter effects? I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question effectively. I mean, you can certainly between the two filters with the notch filter, create some pretty bizarre filtering effects, but the cluster flux, excuse me, is based around Bucket Brigade technology and actual phase cancellation. Now there is chorus and flanging in the synth effects section, but if we're talking about comb filter effects in use of the filters, there are some ways to emulate some of that, but it certainly is not necessarily a replacement for that. I'm not even going to try to say that. The MF108, we'll go with that one. And just to quickly before we move on, I did just get the heads up that the first units are actually going out today.
Yeah,
so people should start. First units should be arriving in homes tomorrow. So for
that's
those,
so awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Super excited.
Okay, so we've got our two sounds right now. We've got our static bass sound. I'm going to hold Shift, hit Synth 2. That's how I'm going to solo it, so we can hear that bass sound. It's a little stiff, so I'm going to change the beat frequency. It's a little too much.
Yeah.
There we go. So the cool thing about beat frequency is it's a linear detune. It allows you to create a basic tuning offset between different oscillators and create some motion so that things don't necessarily feel so stiff. I also could use well, if I go to the more page here. Oh, hang on, sorry. I'm in a mode because I'm in shift mode, so I need to get out of that really quickly. All right, now if I hit poly count, I also could have used the pitch variance parameter, but that's, I like beat frequency personally. That's my kind of thing. On the next thing though, we're going to add a third layer, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I want that third layer only to operate above middle C. So I'm going to hit the low range. Well, I need to go to Synth 3. I'm going to go hit the low range button, and I've now set that range. Now you notice that it's not illuminated in red. So Synth 3 is grayed out because the keyboard is turned off.
Yeah.
And so what I need to do is I need to press the on button, and now we can hear Synth 3. All right, I'm going to go into the Polyphony module. I'm going to set the voice count. Let's call it 4. Set the voice count to 4. Okay. Okay. So on this last sound, I want to use an arpeggiator. And that arpeggiator also happens to be able to be synchronized to the master clock, which means that it's also synchronized to the LFOs and the motion and our modulation envelopes, even though those different things are on different synthesizers. So I'm going to turn on the arpeggiator, and for the sake of time, I am going to just make some basic adjustments to the sound, and you're going to hear how everything comes together. Yeah. And no effects again, of course.
And as you go, and as the arpeggiator is playing, you can go to the More panel and actually see the notes that are being arpeggiated over. You can have it go over multiple octaves.
Turn this up a little bit here. So what I'm doing when I say I'm turning this up, in this VCA module, I have the ability to turn up or down individual layers. And so I'm going to show you that on the screen. I want, obviously, the plucks of this little arpeggiator to be a little bit louder. And so I can go into the VCA More button. I can adjust the individual balance between the pads, our bass, and this plucked little arpeggiator. And the cool thing too, on the back of the instrument, you have assignable outputs. Mm-hmm. And so if you wanted to, let's say, assign the pad to go out the main outputs and the bass to go out of a dedicated output and the arpeggiated lead sound to go out of its own output, you can do that. Yeah. So that's one of the benefits to all this I/O on the back. Okay, so back to our sound. That's right, I have a sustain pedal down here. So
the nice thing about this More panel is that even though we're now on Synth 3 and the panel knob of the VCA will control the level of the third synth, you can still use the soft knobs here to tweak the levels of the others. Mm-hmm. so that you have a little final mixer section, like final VCA mixer section that allows you to tweak these levels very easily.
Turn on hold here. And I'm going to make some adjustments to our sound. Just reminding you, we're not players. So, I'm sure somebody's like, yeah, no kidding.
Oh, I like it though.
Oh, and the reason that the arpeggiator is continuing to play is because we have the hold button on. So there's a hold button here on the panel, and you can kind of make some adjustments for the behavior of that button in the arpeggiator, where you can change whether or not you're actually adding to a note stack or not. So right now I have it set up. I'm going to press the more button on the arpeggiator, and if I go down here to the note hold mode, I've got reset on new, which means that if I play a series of new notes, everything that's already in the arpeggiator is going to be cleared, and it's just going to take in all the new notes that I'm playing. If I was to set it to toggle on off, then I could play a note, play another note, play another note, and add to that note stack. Sure. Or yeah, turn hold on. So this will allow you to add and take away from the note stack of a sound. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Again, we don't have any effects at this point. And, you know, here we are. That's
pretty cool.
Yeah, we're here. And then, you know, the last thing that we need to do, if we like what we've done, is save. So I'm going to press save. I'm going to use the keyboard to enter a name, and I don't know what I want to name it, and so there's this fun function. It's kind of an auto name, and so I'm gonna see. I don't know if you can see this on the screen. There's a little upside down question mark.
The Riddler symbol.
Yeah, and and if I press this note, we're gonna get a series of
road drink. That was cool.
Oh, is there a way to go back?
No.
Oh.
That's it.
You're gonna have to be quick. Babe pop. Let's see. Encouraging mouser find.
Lost Giraffe.
Lost Giraffe.
Yeah,
all right.
I like that one.
So we're going to go with Lost Giraffe, and let's do this. Let's play this game with all the timbres as well. Actually, you know what? I'm actually going to say that let's call this first one, for organizational purpose, let's call the first one pad. We'll call the second one bass, because that's what it is, and then we'll call the third one arp. Let's see.
And so if you have this set up, you can actually also plug in a USB keyboard, a USB plug at the back, and you'll be able, you can just type it if that's like easier for you. And
a couple other things that I'm going to do. I'm going to set the type, category, mood, group. So I'm going to set the category, or the type I mean, to multi, because it's a multi-timbral patch. And I could set it to arpeggio. Sure. That counts. And what do you think? What's our mood? Cheerful, cold, complex, confused.
I was
describes
like
my morning.
Contemplative, actually, sort of.
Contemplative. Okay. All right, and group. New group. So we'll save it under new group. So now,
so these groups can be set up in the settings panel. You can add new ones there.
And you can also add new categories, moods as well. So if you want to create a category called Lost Giraffe, you can do that too, and just save all your Lost Giraffe presets there.
So let's like highlight one thing here. So by moving up and down, you actually also change what you are going to save in this top right button. So if you're on the preset, it will save it as a new preset. If you go down, you can just save a single timbre out, which gives you like one location to split out sounds if you want to do that.
Yep. And then also you can easily export presets, or you can export groups of presets, which is another great function of the instrument. So I am going to hit save, and bang. So now Lost Giraffe is in this machine until we get rid of it or something. Let's see, can the LFOs be key tracked at audio rate? Well, why don't we do this?
Let's go to
I'm going to compare shift. We're going to create an initialized preset. I'm going to go to, excuse me, I'm going to set LFO 1. By pressing the more button, I'm going to go into the LFO1 more page. I'm going to crank up the range to high. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the keyboard.
Quick assign.
Yeah, I'm going to take the keyboard quick assign.
So again, it's like a rectangular little button.
Yep, right here.
Yep.
So this is the expression assign engine, which is where you can assign, your mod wheel, your XY pad, all of those things. In this case, we're going to use the keyboard, the pitch of the keyboard, and I'm just going to crank that to 100% and press. Whoop, wait a minute.
You press save.
I pressed save,
but have to do that.
But it kept it.
Yeah.
That's right. I didn't need to do that. Okay, so key pitch, and let's see. Or you know what? I should have done that to LFO2. Let's do it to LFO2 also.
Well, actually, no. Let's go to mod, and then here, switch up and say, okay, this is actually going to be LFO2.
Right, and so the reason that we're doing that is because I'm gonna pass oscillator 1 through the ladder filter, and then I'm just gonna crank up LFO2. Whoops, we didn't set it to high.
We did it.
High range. So that was more over here, high range. And we could change. I don't know, is the key tracking, is it 100% or is it? So the answer to your question is there's probably a more elegant way for us to create a 1-to-1, 2-to-1 key tracking, but it certainly is possible. Yeah. I wonder. So if I turn off the oscillator and we just play the filter.
So we have another question here. Can both audio inputs, combi plus the 1/4 inch be used simultaneously? Yes, you can.
So we'll go to the mixer section here. And in the mixer are the controls for external input level and external input source, or external input route, and then source. So what we can do is, let's say the input source, let's say it's mic, line, and line.
Yep.
And then we'll say input route, we can route those to the SVF, the ladder, or both. So you have all the same routing options that you do on the mixer.
On the front panel.
Just putting another set of controls in here would have made the panel a little bit deeper. So that's all right here in the mixer more page. Let's see. Any more questions? I guess we can go back to our
Lost Giraffe.
Lost Giraffe, was it?
Yeah.
Probably
now we can actually do shift to do this pages.
Hey, I learned something new today.
There we go.
Lost Giraffe. All right, so we'll bring it back up and play this for another second, and then if there's more questions, please ask. We're live, and we'll shut it down.
So there's a couple of shortcuts that are cool. So the more panel, if you press it again, you actually go to the home page that shows you everything. If you're on the home page and you toggle between it, you toggle between the home page and your browser. So these are two motions that people usually do when navigating the instrument, and it gets you to all the places very quickly.
I will say, I know we've done this without effects this whole time, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn on. I'm just gonna go ahead.
The shimmer. It asks for it.
Let's do Quasar.
Turn it on.
And I'm gonna turn on the master effects here. And I'm actually just gonna jump through each synthesizer and make sure the send level is turned all the way down, because I really only want it on this plucked arpeggiator. Who am I kidding? I want it on the pads too. There we go.
Cool. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That
was fun.
It was fun.
All right, let's see. Does Moog One have an internal tuner? That depends on what you mean by tuner. If you mean tuner like a plug in an external sound source and tune your guitar, no. But if you're talking about its own oscillators or the future potential for microtonality, then yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you, everyone.
We got one more. Oh, nope, we don't. We're good. Bye.
Bye. Cool. Thank you.
That was fun.